An amendment video, unlisted. It'll be accessible on the website, the forum, under the appropriate category, responding to assholes, kind of a thing. Useless, liars, and such. And so Hythloday's contributions are so minor in terms of making some sort of reasonable remarks on any subject that there's just no point in having a category for the tiny bit that might be worth something, because the worthless bits are so abundant and numerous. Let's waste people's time with idiotic accusations based on imbecilically stupid definitions. So it's like arguing with a flat earther or something. It's just this agenda of let's waste everybody's time talking absolute nonsense. So he's made a series of videos. I don't know how many of them I'll bother with. These little short videos making these direct accusations. And Mendham's not a vegetarian. Vegetarians are babies. This kind of nonsense. Ignoring the substance of the arguments. It's kind of like some religious person saying evolutionists believe the planet Earth creates balances in populations on purpose or something, when evolution would say, no, it can take thousands of years for organisms to achieve their balances, and populations expand and contract, and all kinds of horrors happen through starvation and deprivations and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, he's going to tell us what it means to be a vegetarian, or why we're vegetarian, or what the objective is, which is not some dogmatic statement from a god saying do not eat something that is composed of the chemical compounds that define meat, flesh. That's not the point. The point isn't to obey some dogma. The point is to prevent harm. And one of the ways you prevent harm is to animals, to anything on the planet actually, is not to waste resources. Because a wasted resource means it has to be replaced by some other thing, has to be the resource. So if there is a 10-year-old can of tuna somewhere, somebody should eat it. And if there's nobody available, a meat eater to give it to, and a vegetarian eats it, it's just as good. If we made food out of human beings, in the sense that once they died we processed them into green potato chips, Soylent Green, it would be a good vegetarian who would say, yes, I'll eat that, because now I've taken resources that were used to create flesh and I've converted it into energy, which is a positive thing, and I haven't increased suffering anywhere in that stream, and in a sense I've reduced it, because now you don't have to feed me grain that will inevitably disrupt. Lots of feeling organisms will be whacked to death by the combines that collect the vegetable matter. And of course, these arguments are always layered with a little bit of complexity. You have to have a little bit of logic and say, well, that doesn't mean that being a vegetarian kills mice. In a sense, yes, it does. But clearly, it's more efficient to feed that vegetable matter to the humans instead of feeding it to another animal to process it into stored energy. And the amount of energy we store is a tiny fraction of the energy we process. So that's the catch with any of this idea of eating flesh, is it takes a lot of energy to make the flesh. Because only a tiny percentage goes into storage. Most of it goes into talking and walking and maintaining a body temperature and pumping blood through veins and all of that stuff. So it's a tiny amount of grain, percentage-wise, goes into the production of the flesh. So there's not much you're getting out of allowing that middleman to process your vegetable matter. So if you want to kill less stuff, you want to harm less stuff, these are the logical equations, and that's the logical function. The second point I'd make is clearly I'm an advocate for all of those things, and my advocacy is strong and clear, and in that sense I could only fit into these categories of somebody attempting to preserve the welfare of animals through this process of not eating meat for this purpose. And again, to malign it's like any group. Yes, you can malign them with the people who are doing it for some other reason, because they have some edict, like it's good for their health or something else. So he actually makes arguments like that, that somehow you're not appreciating the cause if you don't mind having soldiers fighting for something else. So if I was fighting the Nazis, for example, and I had soldiers fighting in the cause who basically just didn't like the Nazis because they wore blue uniforms, and but everything else the Nazis did was fine. There would be a point where winning the war with them might be dangerous, because those people aren't going to do what needs to get done once you win the war, which is to end the catastrophe that's taking place in Germany. And so you really don't want soldiers who have the wrong agenda, because that might come back to bite you. So you got to be a little careful about that. And again, I think I have been careful. I haven't outright said people who are vegetarian for health reasons are of absolutely no value and are totally destructive. No, I haven't done anything like that. I've just said I'm not going to emphasize health reasons as a reason to be vegetarian, because my cause is to save the Jews and the homosexuals and the atheists, all the people in the concentration camp, not just one kind. And the vegan for health reason people have, first off, they're getting paid. Essentially, they're being vegan for their own self-interest. So it means, that's already a bad incentive. And if you're really going to be good for the cause, you want people who already know what it is to sacrifice something. And that's the whole point of being vegan. And as I've pointed out, the whole point of the argument, the bigger picture argument, is this bigger task of taking care of the bigger problem, which is in nature. The problem on Earth isn't just what humans consume, it's what the entire biosphere is caught up in. It's what all the sharks are consuming, and the whales, and every organism you could point to is consuming. And that's the problem, is the consumption that takes place on Earth in the natural world, which is just as horrific as the processing of animals through our selfish, convenient food mechanism. So you're just lying about people when you sit there and distort not only the motivation of a cause, when you pervert the common understanding of why people are certain things, and the differences between the motivations that can exist between those people. So not all people who are Democrats believe in open borders, for example. It's wrong to sit there and make those assumptions, and it's insanely wrong to make those assumptions about people who have been explicit in declaring their separation from those different causes. So he's just a nasty liar. And it's a waste of time defending yourself against the lies of nasty liars. And I shouldn't have to do that. I mean, it's one of those things that ought not to be if we lived in a just and decent world where decent people made rational and decent and fair arguments, which this lying criminal can't do. So this video won't be on the Amendum channel. It'll just be on the forum for the purpose of making the counter arguments that are necessarily forced to be made, because assholes heckle and inject false arguments for superfluous and subterfuge reasons to undermine arguments through nonsense.
And yet, even more facts about innumerable.
So he uses the word facts and then does this complete perversion. So he thinks he's a rational and a reasonable person because he thinks reason and rationality is not the quality of it. The fact that it actually fits into that category as meaning something isn't dependent on being honest. Because these aren't facts that he's got wrong because he thinks it works this way. He's deliberately misrepresenting truths he knows to exist, and he's calling those facts, when they're just technically true, or they're, I can find a definition in a dictionary, when he knows it's not the common or the argument being made by the other person. Certainly he knows their definition isn't consistent with his definition, and yet he'll call it a fact when he knows it's not a fact. And then he'll say he's a rational and reasonable person that does logic, because he does logic on his wrong assumptions. And they're not assumptions, they are declarations declared insincerely, which are lies. So he's just a fucking liar.
Emmanuel sees.
I have to speed it up because he is a slow talker. Not surprisingly.
That there are kinds of vegetarians, because...
Okay, so in one video he says there isn't kinds of vegetarians. You're either this or you're not. It's an edict. Flesh is the same. All blah 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 blah. No, now there's all of a sudden kinds of vegetarians. So you can see his duplicity already. He's changed his definition between his own videos between 2-day period, and he changes the definition of a word. Obvious chicanery, shenanigans.
The kind of vegetarian who is a vegetarian for health benefit reasons, he has no care for that.
I shouldn't have any care for them. Like I said, I'm just saying that they're fine. It's okay, play that game, people. I'm saying they're not an asset to the bigger picture cause. They have no intention to liberate the concentration camps. So therefore they're not in the war for the same reason I'm in the war. I'm not in the war to stop people in blue suits. I don't care about blue suits.
They are as philosophically disdainful, distasteful to his sensibilities as a meat eater.
Maybe even more so, because they're pretending to give a shit when they've completely profited from the process. So they're almost like something called an entrepreneur who's doing good business by being a middleman and basically just taking advantage of people's ignorance in the market and saying, I'll sell it to them for twice the price because they don't know where to get it for half the price.
So there are vegetarians who are vegetarians on principle, and they don't eat meat because it's wrong to eat meat.
There's no such thing, again, as a principle that it's wrong to eat meat. The principle is that it causes animal suffering. So the key is always what increases suffering is the actual motivation. So again, and that you know, so you're just distorting the truth, preventing visualization or perception of the real agenda. You're obscuring the facts, not revealing the facts.
The act of eating meat is wrong, and there's vegetarians who are vegetarians because of farming methods, maltreatment of animals. So they, in principle, you would think...
No, those are meat eaters. There are meat eaters who thinks it's okay to eat meat as long as somehow the animal was created for that purpose and had the benefit of something what they would consider a more natural life, which a rational vegetarian would say isn't doing them any favors. Creating more of something in some depraved and natural condition, which is just a competitive condition, struggle condition. And because it's less of a struggle, it's somehow okay. They're still extras created for a wrong purpose. It's still unnecessary harm you're causing. And therefore, that argument is moot for that reason. And it's also moot because it's just mostly a preposterous lie. Like the lie of some kind of humane puppy farm. It's no such thing.
Would eat animals that have been treated well, and that don't suffer an onerous death. Then there are
well, I'm just saying that those aren't vegetarians. So again, he's qualified people who aren't vegetarian who are passive, or let's say kinder, gentler meat eaters. He's qualifying them as vegetarians outside of any envelope of discussion. It's not no vegetarian would say that's a vegetarian. It's a vegetarian, the guy who eats meat made on kindness farms. No one would call that person a vegetarian or a vegan. So again, this deliberate and willful manipulation of the verbiage for the purpose of lying. And that's all this is. These are just lies. Despicable lies.
Vegetarians who don't eat meat because of a combination of factors. That it's wrong to eat animals, and they're concerned about the suffering, and those kinds of things. But there are vegetarians who don't purchase meat because it feeds the economy of maltreatment of animals.
Right, which is fundamentally the purpose, is to defund and de-enterprise and create the and make non-existent the forced march of creating organisms for the purpose of their exploitation. We know that that's wrong. I also know that the natural exploitation that's built into nature is also just as wrong. It's the same result. The same camp is built in nature. Yes, maybe it's made out of sticks and stones, and it's not cement walls, and it doesn't have electric fences, but it's the same camp, and the same torment exists in it. And it's just as obnoxious and is just as in need of protest.
So, to my mind, Imendum has no principled reason for not eating meat.
So, he believes that. He believes, he's saying to his mind, he can't understand why I don't have a principled reason. So if I ate roadkill, and I explain that, look, it's dead, a bunch of valuable resources went into the production of that flesh for it to rot in the biosphere, to feed the biosphere, in fact, in that way, would be not getting what it's worth out of it, get its true value. I might as well use it to speak and say, don't hurt animals. I can turn that dead animal into commentary on this subject and protect the next victim before the victim is created. That means I can prevent there being the next roadkill by consuming the roadkill. That's the inescapable and quite perfect logic you know exists, but you're pretending you don't know exists. You're pretending for the purpose of deception and slander and lying. You enjoy lying. You're a liar, a compulsive liar. Bravo. Mommy would be so proud.
He'll eat it if it's given him. If it's 10 years old, tin food, what about 5 years? What about a year old? Since he is an animal.
The point is I'll eat it if somebody's going to throw it out. Okay, and they don't have some other homeless person or poor person to give it to, then I'll eat it. Yeah, not complicated. And again, it's a tiny fraction. This probably comes up one day out of 1 month or even less. This is not an issue beyond the fact that I don't like to see anything wasted. But you can't say I don't have principles because I have a fetish about things not getting wasted. Because I can make the sensible argument that waste is an obscenity to my fundamental philosophy. And clearly I understand that people who wish to pervert this little circumstance into some sort of big circumstance will use this against me. But I'm just saying that should I compromise my fundamental values against waste to placate liars like you? And I'm not going to placate a liar. The liar will just come up with a different lie. So why should I compromise my principles to satisfy a silly aesthetic that isn't even sincerely misunderstood by an idiot like you. You're not sincerely misunderstanding. You're deliberately manipulating because you have no character and you're a lying piece of scum. And, yeah.
Rights advocate and a vegetarian advocate and vegan advocate, and his friends, most donors, the most likely source of food he's going to receive in donations is non-animal products.
I don't know why he makes this assumption. Apparently he thinks I'm networked to a whole bunch of vegetarians. No, I live in a very rich community where people throw out all kinds of food, and so there's, yes, sometimes I get oranges that are overripe, sometimes I get dented pears, sometimes I get all kinds of things. But there's no tendency for it to be vegetarian, except for the people who know me and know I'm a vegetarian, and so they don't give me their the meat products that we're going to throw out because they know I'm a vegetarian.
Do you understand? But if I sent him a big care package of tinned meat products, seemingly he'd be happy to eat them.
Yes, as long as they're expired and you don't have somebody better to give them to. So if you can find a homeless meat eater to give them to who will eat them and at least properly cook them so you don't make them sick or something, then I'm fine with that. I'd rather you did that. I'd rather not consume them, and especially depending on what they are. Like I said, this is narrowed mostly to fish. I won't eat beef. There's lots of things I can't eat it, so it's not even, I can't be a consumer of that. But yes, like expired yogurt or something, yes, I might take that.
So, as I said, he started off offering a couple of £1,000, $1,000, but it became generally established that he preferred to offer up to $5,000 to meet and talk with a physicist. On one occasion, he suggested it might go as high for the right caliber of physicist, a real supreme talking head, that he would pay $10,000.
Right, so now he's going to make another issue about some personal thing, okay, because he doesn't seem to understand my circumstance. So unlike other people, unlike other poor people, I don't have a bad credit rating. So let's understand right away, I never didn't pay a bill or didn't pay a debt. So I have a very good credit rating. So I can borrow the money on my credit card, or I have family who will lend me the money. So I don't have a problem getting $5,000 if I needed it tomorrow. I can make a phone call, get $5,000. Problem is I can't sustain it. I can't pay it back. I can't do a lot of things in my current circumstance. My theory is that if I can get this opportunity to get to a real talking head, I'll win in a big way. And that's my theory. Now, maybe I won't and I'll be in bigger trouble, but that's the theory behind it, is that I can make back the $5,000 without any trouble.
See, the truth about Hythloday is, Hythloday was extremely distressed to see Inmendum in distress when his electricity supply was arbitrarily removed from him. And they condemned his electrics on his building, and he was clearly distressed about the costs, and he was citing the costs and this, that and the other. And so, 2-3 years ago...
So he's now digging into more of my personal life. Now, I have given indication in other videos, okay, that it's a little complicated, my relationship to the landlord. And I could just make it as an empirical argument. I mean, an argument that suits all circumstances, and say you could vaguely understand that if a landlord loses money on a property or has to pay extra, the extra doesn't come out of his pocket. It comes out of the renter's pocket. Landlords pass costs on. Now that's a concept this dolt, I'm sure, understands. I'm sure he understands the economics, that if the price of doing business goes up, the business compensates for that. They don't take it out of the rich man's yacht and say, I have to sell my yacht. No, they say, I have to pay my employees less, or I have to charge my customers more. Okay, so in a landlord circumstance, whatever the landlord pays, the tenants pay. Now, I would say it's more explicit even in that here, just because of the circumstance of the the fact that this property has deteriorated and it's no longer even paying its taxes, okay? So it's really, really bad. And in that circumstance, yes, the bills become sort of direct. Now, the fact is that it's even more complicated in my circumstance because I have a 35-year relationship of doing a lot of the work for the landlord on the property, and for non-monetary compensations, trades of a sort. And so my role here lately has been that whatever has to be paid out is paid out mostly by me. In terms of, I've purchased stoves and carpeting for units to get them rented and different things. So there wasn't any deception or lie or misrepresentation when I showed some anxiety over the fact that effectively I'm going to be paying for this because I'm going to have to pay for something else, like my water heater, for example, because there's no budget, and obviously $1,300 consumed whatever budget there was, so everything else is, But I'm not. This obligation to explain my personal life to you because you have some fake suspicions, and I know these to be fake. I think you understand that there could be a circumstance, and you're just pretending you can't figure that out on your own, just to make trouble. And again, put me on some sort of defensive where I have to reveal parts of my personal life I don't wish to make public on this forum full of a bunch of trolls. But you think you have a right to do it, and again, that's on your character, frankly. I mean, I guess I could just keep bringing up the fact that you attempted suicide, and I could say that in every one of my videos. How many times did you fail at attempting suicide? This person's supposed to be logical and reasonable. I guess it was just a cry for help, right? You wanted your mommy to show up with her full breast and suckle you again or something. I mean, I could come up with crap like that and be disgusting. But no, I'm too big a person to be that kind of a petty cunt.
He donated $50 to Remender, thinking these were costs he would bear. Turns out, it's a rented accommodation.
So, understand the logic. If I own the house, and I had equity in my house, because I had equity, I own a house, he'd give me money. If I'm renting and have no equity, no money. Interesting.
So I was swindled, in a way.
I'm sorry you feel that way. I mean, initially when I first saw this video, I said, oh, well, you can have your money back. No problem. There was no effort to swindle. I never asked for money when the thing happened, so that's all bullshit. I didn't realize he gave me money. I mean, I don't remember it anyway. But certainly I got money from a few people in England now and then, so... certainly, I'm not doubting that he sent the money. And I appreciate it, but if you don't understand that the money was going to the general cause of the amendum, then bad on you. But I'm not giving it back, so I thought about it. I said, just give him back his dirty, stinking money. Maybe I'll just burn $50, because, who wants his dirty money? But I think I'll donate it to some vegetarian cause, some vegan cause. So I'll do that. I'll find a good one. One that's against feral cats being thrown back on the street. I'll see what PETA's opinion is on that subject. So I'll give the money to PETA, probably. Ha. Cunt. I mean, if he was a decent person, I'd just give him his money back. But I thought about it and said, why would I give this asshole, this fucking lying, slandering piece of shit, anything? Yeah, fuck that.
I don't think Mendham would piss on me if I was on fire.
I'll piss on you if you're not, and I'll piss on you when you're dead, you fucking piece of shit. And you're damn right. The asshole you've become, that's right. 2 years ago, I might have. Okay? Might. But now, fuck you. Okay? You can't die fast enough, you piece of shit. You just can't do it. You can't die fast enough to make me happy. You're a disgusting, lying piece of shit. You don't deserve any consideration. You're a mean, evil, sadistic cunt. Alright? You want to torture animals because you can't figure out they have sentient brains. Well, fuck you till dead. Mock people as stupid or idiotic or childish because they recognize that other feeling things matter. I mean, really, I'd rather have a conversation, seriously, if we could just keep the Hitler from doing anything important and we were just having philosophical conversation, I'd feel better about talking to that lunatic than you, because at least he could understand his dogs could feel. You fucking idiot.
In Mendham, I think this could be garnered as a genuine insight, is terrified of death.
I'm terrified of dying, so yes. I don't want to, be in horrible pain, suffering, long, anguishing, horrid, wasting disease. Yes, I don't want to have the fun of dying of a cancer or something. No, it doesn't appeal to me at all. So yeah, I think I'm quite rationally apprehensive about the fun of dying.
He has that money for medical reasons.
Well, I don't have the money, and regardless, there's no evidence that I will go to hospital or do any of that crap. I had a fucking stroke, asshole, and I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't get any tests, okay? I was able to persuade a local doctor just to come to see if there was anything that could be done. But that was it. Okay? Nothing else. Took my blood pressure, took a blood sample. That's it. So there's no evidence I'm running from death. Okay? I don't mind being dead. I just don't like dying, idiot. Doesn't look like a good time, shithead. Looks like a crappy party. I don't want to go. Duh. Again, another point I've made in videos, another point that is not in any way difficult to understand, and yet he's pretending he doesn't understand the difference between dying and being dead.
He wants to cling to this life.
I clearly, if he gave a shit about being dead, he'd be dead. He attempted suicide. Clearly he did it in some way that was going to be less harmful to himself. That's why he failed. Correct? Yes, correct.
Life. And he has that money because he's figured out, that he has to be a miser to be able to potentially cover his medical bills in the future.
Again, I haven't been to a doctor's office in 35 years. I would never go to a hospital again. Ever. No, not likely anyway. Going to have to be a very special circumstance that gets me into a hospital of any kind.
The question, if he cannot euthanize his local cat population, he says he can't find somebody who would do it, or hints at that, then has he castrated or neutered the...
They are already neutered. They're all neutered males. And, again, neutering males isn't really all that effective. The game is the females, and that's all. That's the only game in town, okay? You can neuter 99 of 100 males, and it's just the one that's not neutered is going to spoil that game. So it's almost a waste of time to neuter males. But regardless of that argument, and I, it's not, and again, another subject I don't know if I really want to get into, but, I have euthanized cats because you can't get it done. So I've done it. I can show you the graves.
Cat population? That would be the single biggest personal endorsement of his own philosophy. I fancy he hasn't.
Well, you can fancy lots of stuff, and again, I don't think you realistically can defend that argument as if you thought about it for even a few milliseconds. But whatever, who cares?
I wager that he hasn't.
I wouldn't get a cat fixed, frankly. If as soon as they're asleep for the surgery, I wouldn't let them wake up. There's no point in it. So I would never put an animal through a surgery and then throw them back on the street or something. That's just fucking retarded.
These little series of short videos have been opportunity for vegetarians, and he meant them, even in his most recent reply.
Why would people reply to something so grossly obnoxious? I mean, not only is the argument imbecilic, I mean, flat earther stupid, in terms of it just being a waste of time arguing somebody who's maliciously inaccurate. Okay, you're not inaccurate for any honest reason, you're just being maliciously inaccurate, deceptive, false in your description of a problem. Why would that garner any enthusiasm from anybody to make a counter-argument? Besides the fact that you're preposterously irrelevant to anybody. Nobody likes you, asshole. Nobody listens to you. I mean, nobody of character, right? I mean, I could find Quintica will ever show up every day. But I mean, there's no characters who aren't the same kind of lying scum as yourself in your audience. So of what purpose would it be to bring attention to you? Who would have that as an incentive? You're a despicable, lying, shitty human being. Horribly shitty. Maggot-infested shit.
The criticism is that they say the suffering matters in a stronger sense than is justified.
In a stronger sense than is justified, he's saying now. So this expert on what suffering is making the argument that, say, retarded people don't suffer in any real way. Anything that can't add 2 plus 2 or do fractions, let's say fractions are the key thing. They can't do fractions. Porpoise, elephant, lots of things can't do fractions. Then they have a diminished capacity to have a substantial emotional experience, a sensational experience of qualia, of a good day or bad day. That's his theory, his alone, in my opinion. Only an imbecile would contrive such nonsense. And he thinks we should address his silly flat earth theory. And I don't think there's any reason to address it besides bullshit.
It matters in the sense of empathy.
No, it doesn't matter at all in the sense of empathy. It's not an emotional reaction. It's a cognitive understanding of categories and things that have properties and they fit into the categories. I've already been through this and he knows it. So it has nothing to do with my emotional reaction is just extra. That's just the bing, bing, bing sound on the pinball machine. That's the sound effects. Totally superfluous to the real function that's taking place. Totally superfluous to where the ball's going to go. So the real ball, if you follow the ball, okay, the ball is made out of the logical argument, okay, that this whole me and them thing is a pile of shit because we're all doing the same mechanical function. And it's the mechanical function I know through personal experience that has value. It emerges inside of me, I sense it, it happens, it's an event, and I know it's just as much an event when it's happening to somebody else, and if the event has 2 qualities, good and bad, the good and bad is just as real inside that pinball machine as it is inside this one.
Well, it is not logically reasoned justified. So all they had to do is say...
Okay, it's not reason justified, again, he says. So the reasoning I just applied, where emotion has nothing to do with it, that's just the bing, 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 bing. The reaction is based on a logical perception, a visual perception that you associate spark with fire. You associate gasoline with fire. There's things you associate through rational processing of the environment and the world and how these things function. what things are radioactive, what things are not radioactive. These are all categories. Things fall into the categories. There is absolutely nothing that you can dent in the reasoning applied to the fact that an us and a them, that us and them part has absolutely nothing to do with fundamental function, and it's just nonsense for me to think it does. There's no evidence that me versus them is somehow important, that those words have any substantive meaning, just as a child isn't changed because of who possesses it. The child is still a child. This child is still exactly what he is physically. Nothing changes based on that defines the child based on who owns it. And it doesn't matter who's consciously experiencing. The conscious experience has the value. That argument is unassailable, you lunatic.
Easy, Mr. Hythloday. There you are. There's the reason. All they have managed to do is say, it's obvious. It's obvious.
Again, that's not the argument that's being made. It's just the argument's being made is that on every scale, I can't find reason to see these distinctions. I see reason to see the similarity. 5 fingers, the same imagula placula in the brain, the same physical parts, the same neurons, the same basic blood chemistry, same fucking thing. So all the evidence points to it. No evidence points away from it. So again, a lie, a mischaracterization of the evidence, the volumes of evidence that demonstrate that the individual machines are not in any substantive way different, and the phenomena they're creating are not in any way substantively different. There is absolutely no rational reason to believe my consciousness is special and theirs is not. No rational reason. At all. No fact-based reason. No evidence-based reason. None. Zero. 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 Zero reason to believe substantial degrade in function. Zero reason.
Clearly, it's for the obviousness of it is in question, since such a minute population concur.
Since a minute population concur. And again, based on what? So now it's a popularity contest based on the fact that the majority of people believe in a God that bestows us with some sort of special good or bad will, and that we act out to play our role. Like God actually creates criminals to test our morality. So the criminal was actually created bad and to go to hell by God just for the purpose of teaching us a lesson. Oh, well, that's a brilliant theory. Guess what? I don't think that theory has any hope of being a representative of the truth. I don't think there's any reason to believe that nonsense. So all of your witnesses who believe that, in my opinion, have to be disqualified as jurors. Okay, they can't be on the jury because they're retarded. Clearly,
I'm an animal lover.
For your personal, subjective, emotional reasons, but nothing called an intelligent reason. So you're attracted to animals as you're attracted to women's breasts or something, or a man's dick. I can't say for sure, but whatever you're attracted to. Okay, that's all you understand it to be. It's an attraction. You don't understand it to be associated with some kind of sensible representation or recognition that fire is fire, whether it's on top of a candle or in a coal furnace.
Hurting animals, the idea of animals in distress and having prolonged suffering is an emotional, tangible scratch upon me.
Right. So he's saying he can hear the sounds of the pinball, but he can't see the ball bouncing. He doesn't see the logic of that appreciation, in the sense that he knows what pain and suffering is, and he understands that their pain and suffering is likewise has the same character as his own welfare state. So it's not logic bringing him to the conclusion. He says the only thing that drives him is some silly, I'm obsessed with pussy. So I could say I like pussy, but I would never argue that pussy is worthy of being put on a king's chair and adorned with all kinds of wonderful things because it's some sort of spectacular thing. I'd say no, it's just a personal preference made out of absolutely nothing, like a color preference. There's no logic or integrity to it whatsoever. So I would never make an argument that somehow that's sacred or important or vital. I would just acknowledge that it's vital to people who are obsessed with it. But that's it. There's no logic behind it. You keep denying the fact that the people who do see value in animals and in their welfare are seeing it because they're personally tasted consciousness, they know what it's like, and they're simply acknowledging the fact that a bad thing is happening when an animal's being tormented.
Through the mechanism of empathy.
Again, that's your psychological problem. Okay, these aren't words I use. I don't make appeals to people's compassion or appeals to empathy or appeals to emotion. I make appeals to the logical fact that you can't escape, which is feelings are the cruder mechanism. They've been in the environment much longer than intelligent thoughts. Adding 2 plus 2 has been around a very short time. Feeling horrible has been around a long time.
Giving him Mendham that monies was an example of my empathy.
Again, so wrong reason. Nobody, please, don't give me money because I have blonde hair and you like it. Don't give me money because I have little charming blue eyes or some kind of trivial, superficial reason. If you can't give me money for a good reason, don't give it to me at all. Thank you. I would appreciate that. I don't want rewards for superficial, meaningless elements of my existence. I don't want a trophy for that.
Ask me to ban torture of animals. I'll vote for banning it. Because the justification there is the torturing animals. Thus, I'm not advocating vegetarianism per se. I'm an advocate for...
Okay, so he's an advocate for any definition of necessary torture. So he's just saying as long as it can come to the mind of a human being to do it, his gratification of his want is superior to the factual consequence of the pain and suffering he'll cause through that trivial want. So there's no such thing as an unnecessary human desire or unnecessary human ambition or will or want, which is just absolute shit as a philosophy again. Clearly, human beings can moderate and change their performance and perform better. They can consume less gasoline and get more miles per gallon, so to speak. They can be optimized, and the law should encourage them to optimize.
Humane treatment of animals.
By your definition, which is undefined.
I'm an advocate for non-cruelty to animals.
Again, by your definition, which has not been defined.
An advocate for no unnecessary suffering to animals.
And unnecessary doesn't have anything to do with whims and silly projections of human beings. So anything that they can be in, any insipid thought that comes into their head must be a good enough excuse to torture an animal. So again, what meaning does your sanctions against this unnecessary harm when you have no definition of an unnecessary human will?
If we was an alien exploring the galaxy and we came upon an alien race and we made friends with them, blah blah blah, and everything was going great, but it took time to really understand their culture, and we found that they gleed in torturing animals, we would just not be friends with them. We wouldn't be entitled to go to war with them.
Says you. I think we're entitled. I don't have to be Jewish to defend the Jews. So that's just absolute nonsense. And I certainly don't have to be an animal. I don't have to be a dog to defend dogs. I don't have to be a cow to defend cows. It's just idiotic. I'll choose my causes, asshole, and I'll choose them rationally. You can do your silly, subjective, personal, I'll wait till I have a feeling bullshit. I'm not going to wait till I have a feeling. I'm going to wait until I have a thought. When I have the thought that it's wrong, and it's a rational, reasonable chain of logic, then I'm going to act on it, jackass. I'm not going to ask you whether it's the right time, that's for sure, because you're an idiot.
Yeah. existence we might turn our mind from. We wouldn't trade with them. We wouldn't give them benefits.
I don't know why I'd be praying with them. I certainly had, like, again, says you. That's your ethics. Your ethics are vacant and meaningless and offer no hope to the victimized. You will not rescue the damsel in distress because she's not your wife. Fuck you. You're an idiot.
But I wouldn't certainly argue that we're compelled to annihilate them because of some feature that's for some cultural reason. They actually gleed in the suffering of animals and thought the only reasonable way to eat your animals is after it's been suffered. You know. Seemingly.
So again, he will not come to the rescue. The victims will be victimized. The horror will be perpetrated because he thinks he has some obligation to innately respect some arbitrarily living thing. It lives for no good reason, and yet he thinks he can't violate the fact that it's here. It's here. He can't violate its here-ness. I mean, it's just illogical. I could create a worse alien that eats that alien. So I don't have to directly kill it. I can just create a garden that makes giant plants that eat ugly aliens that like suffering. There. So I've made a new hearable. It's here, so nobody can violate it because it's here. So it should be here because it's here. That's your logic. No. Everything's going to have to earn its existence. It has to go to the trial and prove that it does more good than it does harm. If it can't prove that, then it should be properly and humanely eradicated. If you can't prove you're better than you are worse, you have no reason to exist. It's just a fact.
In Mendham would think, yes, we do go to war with them. Seemingly, though not acknowledged because of their seeming unlikeliness.
I mean, I'd go to war with you assholes. I'd be happy to have a vegan war, vegan war against these fucking mockers of animal suffering. And you do mock it. You have mocked it. And you talk about how I'm against it, and you mocked it. You mock suffering. You mock the word bad. You mock these things. You mock the word torture. And then you'll tell me you have some sincere sense of some dignity that needs to be respected here and some truth that needs respect. You don't respect any truth, you fucking piece of shit. You selfish, maniacal, evil piece of crap.
We are obligated to go and search out this universe and galaxy, just in case there aren't some Klingons who enjoy the suffering of animals, perhaps, and valorize it.
Yes, you go out, seek victims, and rescue them. That would be a super cool thing to do. I would love to have victim rescue squads. Yes, fantastic idea.
You see, when it's balancing risk.
Concentration camp liberators. Yes, I'd love to make all those. Yes, let's liberate all the universe's concentration camps. Let's tear down all of those barbed wire fences and spare the harm.
These people in Mendham are not clear. See?
Liar, liar, liar. These people in Mendham have made thousands of videos going into meticulous detail on what they understand the physical universe to be and the process of evolution to be and the process of our brain function to be, and they have done it in redundant detail. And you brick-headed lying piece of shit have just ignored all of that.
So, balancing and measuring how much risk is acceptable in the context of rights, or it's no risk is unacceptable. If it's no risk is unacceptable,
Again, the simple argument is you go to trial, okay, so we establish some fair... The right is you have a right to defend your life. The argument is if you can't defend your life, then you have to accept the consequences of that truth, which is you're not worth feeding.
In one sense, we have to make our life's meaning about searching the galaxy to make sure we eradicate all other procreating life and make sure no other animals are tortured in the universe. because no risk is...
Well, this is more into the sci-fi realm of what possible things could be done if. So all of the ifs have to be taken care of before you even have a conversation like this. But I've also suggested a machine can do this. We can just send an android, okay, to go do our cleaning for us. It just has to be able to recognize a victim. So we just create an android that can do some processing to identify victims and shoot the perpetrators. Yeah, good idea.
Acceptable. And then, in the other sense, everybody who thinks no risk is acceptable actually ought to commit suicide, because they in themselves present a risk in the universe. They present a risk to themselves. They make...
Right. It is a hard choice to make, investing in your life. But, I mean, quite obviously the advocacy is very important. The fact that there are people here to argue and defend a cause. The soldiers all can't commit suicide. I mean, some of them have to stay in the war and fight it. Yes, it would be to the best interest of some of them. Some of them will not be critical to the battle. They'll not accomplish anything. They should have blown their brains out on day one. Because they're just going to endure a bunch of hard suffering and torture, and they're not going to get any good shots off, and they're not going to kill any gooks or do anything of merit. They're just going to end up burning to death in some kind of horrible way in the future. So they would have been better off shooting themselves. But it's just not possible when they're all on the starting line to understand what horse is going to break its leg. I mean, if you knew what horse was going to break its leg, well then, yeah, you just say, okay, come on, don't race, you're going to break your leg. But we can't know that ahead of time. So we got to run the race.
I say they present a risk to other people.
Right, and we say you're a risk to other people, that you're a malicious, horrid, festering, putrid, cancerous growth on the human condition. And the sooner you get cut off, the better. But, no one's willing to be the surgeon.
But you may get a really painful form of death, and therefore you should seek to preempt that and not have the real pain.
Again, if we believed that arguing and advocacy had absolutely no value and there was no hope and the cause was lost and blah, 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 well, yes, then you would commit suicide. Many of the Japanese committed suicide, in the war. That's what they're doing lots of them in those caves and in those cement barriers. They killed themselves because they knew it was a lost cause.
Painful end to your life. If you engage in sexual intercourse, you present some minute risk, no matter how contractually you make an agreement that we were not having sex for procreation and all.
So again, he's saying that we should live like some sort of austere robot or something. And then we should kill ourselves because we can't do that, because we're of the flesh, and while we are living, we have to take care of our selfish needs, some percentage of them. And we make a concession to that. We don't call that success, we just call that the human condition. And again, you seem to think you know what the right answer for us is. Well, I'll say the right answer for you is you're a useless piece of shit, especially talking the absolute drivel you're talking now. You're just a menace to anything called progress or rationality, because you're such a preposterous liar, such a manipulator of words and sophistry, that you're just a useless piece of blight. And the sooner the fucking smallpox virus that you represent is eradicated, the better. I can have that opinion. I have that opinion. Go ahead and have your opinion, jackass. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to make an argument defending my opinion that you're scum. You don't make a rational argument or a fair argument defending your accusation that we are scum. So fuck you. Are hypocrites. So fuck you. Your arguments are made of lies and deceptions. That's all they are. They're just word tricks. And they're not even good ones. They're retarded ones.
Accidental pregnancies will be terminated. There's always some chance that they may escape your murderous nature for breaking that contract in the light of feeling different along the ways.
And again, if I had the crystal ball and I could see, oh, Gary, you're going to be a complete failure, it's not going to mean anything, it's not nothing good is going to happen, then yes, I'd kill myself. But that's not what I believe. So, again, what do I do with your argument? My investment is in the fact that I consider the people being born right now in Indonesia essentially me types. And they're being born in absolutely shitty conditions. So you don't think that horrifies me? But again, how does my life and death fix any of that? It doesn't. So the biggest bogeyman, the biggest fear I have is the recurrence argument. This life is the least of my problems. It's the ones I'm going to have to live tomorrow that are the big problem, because I'm living them from even a worse condition than I started this one from. I'm not going to have the nice hair and the blue eyes either. I'm not going to have any of those. I'm not going to have any of the advantages I had this time around. And so it's even going to be a harder and more miserable grind.
There's too much that doesn't make sense in the hypocrisies.
And then being an imbecile just is just scary as fuck also. It's like just saying, you're going to live your life after you got whapped by a, 10-pound steel ball or something. And would you want to live your life that way? So if tomorrow I said you get whapped in the head with a steel ball, you lose half your identity in terms of half of your character, your intelligence, would you want to continue living into that circumstance? I don't want to live as half the man I am now in the future. No way. I don't want to live this life, let alone that life. And I don't do anything to prevent that life by being dead.
The paradoxes of opposite conclusions when you think these things through.
Again, this claim that he thinks something through with these superficial, overtly contrary arguments. 1 minute you're only a vegetarian if you're explicitly one thing, and then he has a whole bunch of wide-ranging definitions of vegetarian, which include somebody who eats meat, tortured on the special happy farm. Which wouldn't be a vegetarian.
There's too much confirmation that there's no actual reason beyond some empathetic statement that suffering matters.
Again, not an empathetic statement, a rational, reasoned, logical argument that the suffering I experience isn't in any way substantially different than the suffering any of these other feeling organisms endure. And if I value the suffering I have, which I do, as being positive and negative and being real, I have to value their suffering because I have no reason to believe it's any less real than my own. No reason to believe it's any less real than my own. The stuff I experienced, the stuff I sampled. The sample was true and honest. I've sampled it. I know what it is, and now I can identify it when it's in other places in the world, and I can identify it with clear distinctions of good thing, bad thing. Period. And we're done. Not complicated.
Intrinsic to itself. Other than it's obvious. Oh, I'm not being empathetic. I'm just saying it's obvious.
Again, that's not the argument being made. I can repeat the argument over and over and over again. It's not that it's obvious. What's obvious is I have no reason to believe there's something specially different about